Hi, everyone. So my name is Jenny, and I am an AP environmental science teacher. I am currently living in Montana. Um, Moved here from California, and it is very cold out today, so missing California a little bit. So let's go ahead and get right into it. I'm going to pull my slides up here. Give me just a sec. All right, let's get this going. And back to the start. All right. And presentation mode. Cool. Okay, so what we are going to talk about today, oops, there we go. We are going to talk about Earth's seasons and climate and kind of how those things happen and some things that change those or impact that. Um, all right, I think I got myself all set up here. Perfect. Um, all right, so let's jump right into it. So what we're going to talk about today is solar radiation um, and Earth seasons. We're going to talk about Earth's geography and how that impacts climate in different areas. And then El Nino and La Nina, specific climate events, how those are caused, and what impact they have on local regions. And the theme of this lesson is Earth's atmospheric processes are driven by energy from the sun, and really kind of how that impacts everything. The sun is really driving all aspects from seasons to climate, and how that works, and special climate events as well. All right, solar radiation and Earth seasons. Incoming solar radiation, or what's also known as insolation, is the Earth's main source of energy. Solar radiation is radiant energy emitted by the sun, particularly electromagnetic energy. So let's take a step back for a second. That was a lot of words. What does that really mean? So we're going to look at the diagram there. I think that's a really good way to kind of explain what's going on. Um, Talking about magnetic energy, that is the majority of the energy that's coming from the sun. And some of that energy is stuff that we can see, like the light that's given off by the sun, and some of it we can't see. If you look at the diagram on the very top, that's going to say yes and no, and maybe in the gray areas of whether or not the different types of energy are able to get through the atmosphere and make it all the way down to Earth. So we can see some can and some cannot. Moving down on the diagram, the radiation type, so those are the different names that we give these different types of radiation. And then farther down is relative how big a wavelength is. So remember, a wavelength is one time of it completing the wave, and how big that is for these different types of energies. Let me move this little thing over here so you can see this better. Um, so let's start all the way over here at the left. So if you look at radio waves, those do come in from space, from the sun, and from different stars as well. And they're huge waves. So those ones, one wavelength is going to be the size of like a building. So really, really long wavelengths coming in from those. And that is going to be radio waves. Microwaves and infrared aren't really going to come in from the sun. Some can access and come in, but not 100%. And then that visible light, that's the different light that we can see. So that's the full color spectrum, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, and violet. So that's the different things that we can see. And visible light, those wavelengths are very, very small already. So it relates it to the size of like a protozoan. So you couldn't see the wavelength with your eye because it's so small. And then moving forward, they get really, 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 really small with gamma rays being so tiny. They're the size of like an atomic nuclei. So really, really small. And it's a good thing that those X-rays and gamma rays can't come in because they are so powerful and moving so quickly that they would just destroy human tissues and human cells. So they are, dangerous to us. So it is a very good thing they can't make it in. So all of those things from radio waves to gamma rays are all that is the electromagnetic spectrum or electromagnetic energy. So all of that counts, and all of those different energy types, are being emitted by the sun. Um, can go into one of them a little bit more specifically here. So in ultraviolet, some ultraviolet light does make it down to the earth. So I'm sure that you've heard of like UVA, B, and C. And those are a lot of them are deflected, especially so A would be closest to visible light. So it's like the slowest moving, whereas C is like closer to X-ray, so it's faster moving. And most of C is actually absorbed in our stratosphere, so it doesn't make it down to Earth, which is really great because it would give us all skin cancer if it did. And that's awesome that it doesn't make it down. The majority of B is also absorbed. Um, um, by sorry, I blanked for a second, by ozone, the ozone layer. And that's why it's so important that we need an ozone layer, because UVB is absorbed at that stage. And if UVB does get down, it causes skin cancer. It can cause other issues too with your eyes and cataracts and that kind of thing. And UVA can also be dangerous, but it's the least dangerous of all of them. And that's why maybe you'll notice now when you buy sunscreen, it says that it's UVA and UVB protectant. A lot of times it's really good to make sure your sunglasses say that too, UVA and UVB protectant, to protect, again, your skin and eyes from the damage of ultraviolet radiation. So yeah, that is the entire source of the electromagnetic energy that's coming in from the sun. And so this array of energies is really what drives everything on our planet. So it's going to drive our food chains, it's going to drive weather, climate, everything. So it's really sort of important to break it down and what is that energy, and what does it look like? What are the different parts of it? And that's it. So let's move on. All right. So, like we said, not all of that solar radiation is going to make it down to Earth's surface. A lot of it is going to be reflected. So, 29% of it is reflected back out into space, um, absorbed in the atmosphere, 23%. So, like I said, the ozone layer is really good at absorbing a lot of harmful UV rays. So without that, that's why everyone was so upset when the ozone layer had a hole in it from the chlorofluorocarbons, and we needed to repair it so that we can make sure that it is safe from those rays. So 48% then is absorbed onto the Earth's surface. So that means it's coming all the way in and it is hitting the ocean or it is hitting land and it is being absorbed. And a lot of times then it changes from like light energy into heat energy. So we'll kind of next one here. So this is a complicated picture. We don't have to break the whole thing down, but what we kind of want to look at is the fact that the yellow is what we were just looking at. So that's the idea that, some of it gets pushed back out as that light energy, but that a lot of it is absorbed into the earth and becomes now heat energy. And a lot of that Oh, I think it's back. Can you see me now? Yay. Okay, cool. Thanks for hanging in there with me. All right, let me get the slides back up here. I have no idea what happened and why it stopped working. For me, it just said loading screen forever. Not sure. Okay. Pull this up. There we go. All right. Cool. Okay. So basically, what we were saying is that electromagnetic energy is a bunch of different types of wave energy that's coming in from the sun. Some of it we can see with our eyes. Other parts of it we can feel with our skin, like out in the sun. But yeah, a lot of it is reflected before it even gets here. The part that does get here, roughly 50%, is absorbed into the ocean or into the earth, and then it becomes heat energy, and a lot of that energy is also lost back out into space. um, but some of it, because of the clouds and the atmosphere, and this is that greenhouse effect, bounces back and forth inside the atmosphere, and that's awesome for us because we would freeze without that. um, and we need it to keep us warm. And as it moves around, we all know that heat rises and cold air falls. So if you think about that happening on a global scale, you're going to have areas of the earth that are getting like pelted with sun, and the air is going to go up because it's really hot. And then cold air is going to come in underneath that. And globally, that's going to cause a lot of chaos, and it's going to cause like storms and weather events and just wind and different things like that. So in general, that's kind of how the sun causes weather. Is it heats up the land, and then the land has air moving, hot air rises, cold air comes in, and that's weather. All right, let's look at specific spots. So this is going to seem like kind of a jump for a second, but it'll make sense here. So the rule of 10, you may or may not have gone over this already in class. The rule of 10 means that when energy is passed in an ecosystem from one trophic level to the next, only 10% of the energy will be passed on. I'm going to give you a second if you're taking notes to copy that, and I'm going to text our IT support really quick and say that we got it all fixed here so they're not worried. All right. All right, all good. So 10% of the energy that's coming in moves up at every level. And a lot of times too, that can be looked at in like pounds if you're looking at something, because in general, organisms convert their energy into body mass sort of at the same rate. So let me break that down for a second. So here we have two food chains. One is an aquatic, oceanic food chain, and one is a terrestrial. So they both start with a producer, though. So all energy, all animals, everything, again, that comes from the energy from the sun. So there are some very cool organisms on our planet that are able to take that light energy and turn it into sugar, and then that feeds everything else. So if it is going to take only 10% moves up, you can kind of go backwards. So if you have like one energy on the top, you're going to need 10 energy below that, 100 energy below that, 1,000 energy below that. So whatever amount of energy it took to grow that plant, a certain amount it's going to take. You can look at it as if looking at it in pounds, I think, is a little bit easier to understand. So let's say that we have 1 pound of hamburger, right? Cow. That 1 pound of hamburger would have taken 10 pounds of grain in order to generate it, and then that would have taken 100 units of energy in order to make it. So it's kind of an abstract way of looking at it. But that's kind of why people always say that eating meat is really bad for the environment, because to eat something higher up on the food chain, you're only going to get 10% of what you could have gotten if you ate something lower down. And that's really true when we're talking about like ocean creatures. So if you obviously, if you just ate some seaweed, that would be awesome because that's the most energy efficient. So if you were going to eat like sardines, that would be good too. But if it takes like algae, and then sardines, and then skipjack or bonita, and then those are eaten by bluefin tuna, and then that's eaten by a shark. That 1 pound of shark is going to take 10 pounds of bluefin tuna, 100 pounds of bonito, 1,000 pounds of, let's see what I said, sardines, and then 10,000 pounds of algae in order to create like that one dinner for you. So, in other words, that's sort of how energy moves through our environments. The major sort of thing that you got to remember here is that energy is lost. So, energy is coming in from the sun, and we're just burning it like crazy at all these different areas. Remember, only like 50% made it in. We're going to talk specifically about that. The question is, does water absorb more energy from sunlight than the land? No, it absorbs it differently. Does absorb it differently, and it has to do with its thermal retention capabilities. Um, and that's kind of a hard question to answer too, because technically more energy would be absorbed by ocean, because there's more of it. But you just have to look at land mass and like where the sun is hitting it and stuff. So I'm going to say overall no, not necessarily. Okay, so I think we're kind of good on this. Oh, what I was saying is, in general, energy is just being lost and burned. And if the sun like turned off and we didn't have the sun tomorrow, we would use up our energy until it was gone, and then we would all be freezing and there'd be nothing to eat, and then there'd just be no more energy on Earth and it would be lifeless. Whereas matter is circulant all the time. So we're never losing any matter. The amount of carbon that we have here, goes from the atmosphere, and then it becomes a tree again, and then we eat, fruit from the tree, and it becomes part of our body, and then we have waste that then becomes part of the soil, and then so like matter is always circulating and always here. Energy is a one-way thing, so it's coming in from the sun. All these things are using it really like inefficiently and burning it, and then it's gone. And it moves out. So that's kind of the big takeaway for energy in the ecosystem there. Okay, the angle of the sun rays determines the intensity of solar radiation. And due to the shape of the Earth, the highest solar radiation is received at the equator and decreases towards the poles. So it's just the most direct rays that are coming in from the sun are going to cause the highest amount of energy to be in that area. So right at the equator in the middle, it's the most direct, it's right at the center. And so it's going to be hit with the majority of the sunlight. And off towards the side at the poles, it's not going to be as direct. I don't want you to think it's like farther away, because the amount of distance from the equator to the poles is not that far in relation to how far we are from the sun overall. So it's not that it's like farther away, it's that it's like a ball and it's like kind of skimming the top of it versus hitting it directly. So not farther away. A lot of times, like with seasons and everything, there's going to be a trick answer that's going to be farther away. That's like never going to be it. The Earth is so small, and the difference between like its tilt, or the difference between our equator and the poles as far as distance, is so tiny with how far away we actually are from the sun. It's not distance. So I don't want you to think it's that. It's the like how it's like skimming off the side of it versus hitting it directly. That kind of makes sense. So the equator, it is hitting directly, and it's skimming on the poles, and that's why the intensity is different there. And you can see the results that makes. And most of us here in the northern hemisphere tend to think of that like as the center. But again, let's think about where the equator is. If you really look at the middle of this picture here, the equator, the very center of the Earth, is that green band that goes around the middle. So the equator is fairly low down from where we are, especially if you're like me in Montana. The equator is pretty far away. But you can see, because of that direct sunlight that's hitting that equator right there, look how green it is. It's excellent for plants. There's plenty of sun that they need to grow there. So you can directly see kind of these zones of climate created by that light hitting directly. So not the distance, by the light hitting directly on the equator is going to have a lot of plants, whereas on top and bottom of it is going to be more temperate or desert climates. And then at the very poles is you're going to have those polar climates where it's really cold. And again, feel free to stop me anytime or post a question. I'd be happy to answer it. Okay, solar radiation received at a location on Earth's surface varies seasonally, and the tilt of Earth's axis causes its seasons. So this picture that we looked at before is kind of an oversimplification. We wanted it to be simple to kind of grasp that concept, but we're going to complicate it a little bit more right now because the Earth is not spinning straight up like this. The Earth is tilted 23 degrees and spinning kind of like that. So this picture is going to get a little bit more complicated there. That's a little bit more accurate of what it looks like. It is tilted on its axis. And then, so it's tilted and it's spinning around like that, but it's also moving around the sun. So when it spins like this, we all know that's a day. And as it moves around the sun, that is going to be a year that goes by. So within each year, we have different seasons. And this picture kind of illustrates that. So the Earth is on that same tilt. So at one point in the year, let's look at, see if you see my mouse when it comes up, perfect. So in this one right here, this one would be spinning again around in circles like that. And it looks like it is tilted more towards the sun there, but again, it's not closer and it didn't like move or anything like that. It is just sort of the top angle is angled more towards the top of the sun. Sorry, the top of the Earth is angled more towards the sun at that point in time. And that's going to be summer in the northern hemisphere. So that's going to be, they're having longer days, they're getting more sunlight. It's going to cause it to warm up more because again, that solar radiation is going to hit the water and the land, and it's going to cause it to heat up, and that's going to be summer. At that same time, it is going to be winter in the southern hemisphere. So as you move around to this other one over here, it's going to be the opposite. So this is kind of, well, we're probably like right in the middle of these guys here because we're in the middle of fall and winter, depending on where you are. It definitely feels like winter here. But in the northern hemisphere, it's going to mean that the days are much shorter. It's a lot colder, a lot less direct sunlight hitting it. And it's going to become winter. So you're going to have a lot of ice and snow. Whereas in the southern hemisphere, it's going to be their summer. So in Australia, Christmas is in the middle of summer, which is cool for them. But yeah, so that's what causes seasons. And that's always going to be like questions on the test saying, is it because the Earth is closer or farther away? And it's not true. It's because of the intensity of the angle of sunlight at that time of year based on how the Earth is tilted and how the sun is hitting it based on that tilt. All right. Let me pause there. Is there any questions about anything that we've gone over so far or about seasons? I know for some reason seasons and like the tilt of the Earth is can be confusing sometimes. Cool. Okay. The next section. Spring for northern hemisphere would be over here in this last one because it's kind of let me say this better. Summer and winter are like when we're more extreme angles. And then when we're at a side angle, that's going to be either spring or fall. So spring and fall really look sort of the same. It's just whether or not it's heading more towards the summer one or more towards the winter one. So spring for us would be this one in the back over here. All right, so Earth's geography and climate. All right. Weather and climate are affected not only by the sun's energy, but by geologic and geographic factors such as mountains and ocean temperature. So we'll break that down a little bit. I try to give you guys something to write down just so that you can go back in your notes, but then we'll always like, what does it mean? So geographic, just that's like mountains, any earth feature. Geography, remember, is like earth and rocks and stuff. So that's what that means. And then let's break down what weather and climate means. Weather is day-to-day change. So if you made a statement like it's 50 degrees out and raining, you're talking about the weather. Whereas climate is a long-term thing. We're talking 30-year averages or more. So if you're saying I live in a tropical climate or I live in a desert climate, that's climate that you're talking about. And so just like as reference, when you say climate change would be a 30 or plus year more average change that was noticed. You can't be like, oh, it's really hot out today, it's climate change. Like that's weather. Um, and so that's kind of the difference between weather and climate, just some vocabulary. All right, so you're probably wondering why I have a picture of a pool, what sense that makes. But that's kind of what I was talking about as far as water and land and how they absorb that energy. And you'll understand that if you've ever gone swimming in an outdoor pool in the summertime, or even like at the ocean or anything, you know that the side of the pool, like if you're walking to the pool, it can get extremely hot and you'll have to like run to not burn your feet because of how hot the cement can get. But then you get in the pool and it's like comfortable temperature or cold even in comparison with the cement around it. Um, and that has to do with the thermal retention properties of those materials. So rocks and things like that, cement, sand, earth things, they have a very low ability or a low thermal retention property, a low ability to hold on to temperature. So that means that they can like change wildly in their temperature. Metals are really, really low ability to hold like onto a temperature, which is why they're great to cook with, because you put your cookies on a cookie sheet and you put it in the oven, and that cookie sheet is going to get up to 300 degrees really quickly because it changes temperature really fast, and you want it to cook the bottom of your cookies. So metal really changes temperature really fast. It's not great for you if you like touch it because it can be really hot, especially if you're like like metal in your car in the summer. If you like touch the seatbelt thing, it's going to burn you because it gets really hot really fast. So water doesn't. Water can hold its thermal retention, meaning that like in the summer, the pool is going to be nice and cool. It's not going to heat up really fast. And how that kind of interprets or changes climate or weather, what we're talking about is places that have a lot of water are not going to change. They're going to be able to kind of stay more steady. So if it's a place that is very humid, that water and the air and the land is going to keep the climate very stable. And that's why like I'm trying to think of like a humid place. Let's say like the southern East Coast. So like Florida and South Carolina in the summer, you're going to be able to, it's going to stay sort of the same. Like at night, you're going to have like the hot, humid night because that humidity in the air is going to like hold that temperature the same. In contrast, like the desert is, it's also a hot place. It might get up to 100 degrees during the day, but at night it could drop down to freezing because there's no water in the air. And so it can change wildly. So different environments based on how much moisture is just like in the area are going to change a lot. And so that's how water can really affect climate. And then places that are coastal or near the ocean, or even like near a big lake. Everyone who lives in Michigan knows about the lake effect and how these large amounts of water are going to, control the temperature of the land as well. So that's why, like if you lived in any sort of coastal town, so like Los Angeles, the temperature of the ocean water is going to control the temperature of the land. Typically, because water has a high thermal capacity, it's not going to change a lot. So you're not going to have like big swings of temperature, whether it's from the daytime to nighttime or whether it's from winter to summer. It's going to stay pretty consistent because of that. So places that are near the ocean tend to be more temperate and not have large swings, even if it's cold. So if you're like from the Pacific Northwest, that cold ocean water is going to make it 50 degrees and cloudy and chilly, all of the time. So that's kind of how oceans or large bodies of water are going to control the water. So the farther you are from water, then the less humidity in the air, the bigger the swings that are going to go on. Um, with relation also to that equator. So again, the closer you are to the equator, the more constant it's going to be in one time. So I guess farthest from the equator and the least amount of water, you're going to have these like giant swings in temperature. All right, this picture looks really confusing, but we're going to just kind of break it down very simply. We don't really need to know like all these pieces of it. What you do kind of need to know here, this is what we were talking about, is that when air gets hot, it rises, and then you have to have air below it. It's not just going to be nothing. So hot air is going to go up, and then cold air is going to come in underneath it, and there's wind. So if you have ever been to the beach or live somewhere near the beach, you would know that it's usually fairly calm in the morning because you've gone through a night of darkness and the land drops down to similar temperatures as the ocean. Or maybe even like a little colder than the ocean. So in the morning, first thing in the morning, there might be a little bit of breeze going out towards the water. Surfers like that because it holds the waves up. That's why you see surfers in the morning. But typically not a lot of wind. However, in the afternoon, when the land is really hot because it's been being hit by the sun all day, you're going to have that going up and cold air coming in from over the ocean. And so you typically have pretty breezy afternoons at the ocean. So that's sort of what's going on circling around in those areas. See, and that is going to cause wind from the ocean coming onto land. So that's what causes those prevailing winds, in short, simplified it a little bit. But typically, you're going to have wind coming in from the ocean because of the heating of the land and the air moving. That water that's coming in from the ocean is going to bring in clouds and precipitation, and that is going to go until it hits a mountain. When it hits a mountain, then it's going to have to drop a lot of that water to clear over the top of the mountain. And that's why you have a lot of rainfall on the ocean side of mountains. This effect here is called the rain shadow. So a rain shadow is a region of land that has become drier and because of higher elevation area blocks precipitation from reaching the land. So the rain shadow is the place on the side without the ocean. And that happens over time because of all of the rain hitting this kind of geographical block in the mountain, and then it's a desert below it. And one of the best places to see this is just like a clip from Google Maps of Los Angeles. You can see a bunch of rain shadows if you kind of look closely here. So this area right near Temecula, you can see that this is the peak of the mountain. And then like everything on this side got a ton of rain, and everything on this side it's really dry, and that's Palm Springs, so it's like a desert, so this area is like really nice beach houses and Southern California weather, and then it's like a desert and really hot like right behind it. And then over here, these are the mountain ranges, and they get a ton of rain on one side of them, that's why it's really green, and then right on the other side here, you have just complete desert, and this kind of leads out towards like what Death Valley is. So you can see that's an example, real life example of a rain shadow, and how these mountains right outside of an ocean are going to cause areas that are green and lush and get a lot of water, and then areas that are deserts. All right, keep going here. Okay, the last thing that we are going to talk about is El Nino and La Nina, so some special weather events and what causes them. Okay, don't get scared of this picture. I know it's really complicated, but again, we're going to simplify it. So El Nino and La Nina are a phenomenon associated with changing ocean surface temperatures in the Pacific Ocean. So these are ocean currents, and there's a lot of them. I know sometimes when you look at the ocean, it seems like it's just water and it's just sitting there, but it's really not. It's moving a lot, really strong ocean currents. The ocean is constantly churning and moving. An oversimplification here of what's going on is these two swirls. So in the northern hemisphere, it is moving clockwise. So overall, the water from the equator is going over here towards China, and then it's kind of hitting land and coming back up here towards Alaska, and then back down the coast. So it's circulating that way. And then in the southern hemisphere here, it is doing the opposite. So it is coming over the equator here, hitting Australia and going down, and then coming back up over South America over here. And this circulating, the Coriolis effect is what it's called. It is caused in general by this circling of the Earth. So the Earth is spinning here in this direction, so with as that moves, if it's going this way, the water is going to come back this way. So it's moving this way and it's causing the water to slosh back this other way. And so in general, just think about the water is going to go on the equator heading west. So it's going to be going over there towards like China and Australia. And then it kind of like hits land and circles back up. And that in general is what's going on with these ocean currents. And let's see. Okay, so that is going to, again, think about what we talked about solar radiation. The majority of the radiation is going to be more directly hitting that equator. So the ocean water at the equator is going to be much warmer because it's getting hit with more energy from the sun. And then because of the Coriolis effect, or because of the spinning, I'm going to pause 1 sec. Sometimes it's hard for us for whatever reason to remember which direction it's spinning in the northern or southern hemisphere. And sometimes those questions are on the test, or it's important to, remember that, in the northern hemisphere, it's spinning clockwise. And then like in the US, we say counterclockwise, but I went to school in Australia and they say anti-clockwise. And I thought that was really funny that they said anti-clockwise. And so for me, I can just remember the Australians say anti-clockwise and that it's anti-clockwise in the southern hemisphere. I don't know if that'll help you remember it, maybe, but anyways, so because of the way it's spinning, all this warm water is getting pushed in the same direction, and it's kind of getting like stuck over there by Australia, and that causes just like really clear warm water in that area. And warm water typically is nutrient poor, and because it is kind of surface water, it typically doesn't have a lot of nutrients in the water, so you don't have a lot of like phytoplankton in the water or anything, and that's why it's clear and beautiful and warm, but it's typically nutrient poor, so it doesn't support a lot of animals. And that's why you see the coral reefs over there and you think, coral reefs, that's a ton of animals, but they're all really small. So the majority of the fish from the coral reef are, small. And even if they're like bigger fish, they're still small, in comparison with like, the 16-foot great white sharks that we have in, California or something. So overall, they're small creatures. And they do rely on the coral as the basis of that whole food chain. So they need the coral and the algae that live in the coral to have the food chain at all, or else there wouldn't be anything there. So in general, warm water there is going to be nutrient poor and clear and warm on that side. And so because of that, if you look at the two arrows, you have cold water, coming down from like the Arctic or up from the Antarctic. And that cold water is, remember we talked about like hot water rises and cold things are, below. So you're going to have cold water that's going to be kind of sweeping the bottom of the ocean. And that's like where the ocean soil is. That's where all the nutrients are. So over here in California, you're going to have a ton of cold water that's like hard to see through. And that's because it's filled with like, dirt, which is that dirt is going to be nutrients for animals, so like carbon and nitrogen and phosphorus and everything that they need to live and grow. And so you're going to have like really big animals over here as far as like size. And then this is off of like in Peru and Chile, as far as size, and then as far as numbers. So you're gonna have like massive schools of fish. No, they don't. Good question. They're opposites. So this is a La Nina. La Nina is the typical. So La Nina is going to be like normal times. So this is a La Nina experience right now with these kinds of things. So over where the cold ocean water is welling up, you're going to have really large fish, and you're going to have lots and lots of fish. So really good fisheries. Again, like in Australia on the coral reefs, like you're not going to be able to like, you know, catch a bunch of fish. Yeah, they're really tiny. You could catch them for aquariums, but that's about it. But on the other side, that's where you're going to have fish where you're catching fish for food, like millions of pounds of fish and things. Okay, so that's normal, and that is La Nina. And let's see here. Okay, so we got rid of our pictures. And then a El Nino year for some reason, and this we don't really know why it happens. We can track like in the history of like when it happens to see it. It's like doesn't follow like an exact pattern, kind of, and that's why like you'll see in the news they'll be like, we think it's going to be an El Nino year. But like they're not 100% sure like what is going on here or why this happens. But for some reason, the ocean currents don't stop, but the winds that cause them really sort of do. So those like the trade winds that are going to be pushing that water that direction really do sort of like slow down enough that that body of hot water that's usually trapped by Australia spreads out across the equator. So it's going to come back like towards Mexico and really spread out. And this is kind of like a picture you would see in the test or something. So it shows that if you look closely at the top one is the La Nina, or a typical year where that hot water is pushed over towards Australia, and the bottom is an El Nino year where that hot water comes all the way back across the Pacific. And so we can go over consequences in it, but I think it's better to just look at the map. And so what we have been talking about, the ocean really indicates the weather in different areas. And so if you're used to a very cold ocean and all of a sudden you have a hot ocean, that's going to change everything as far as what goes on. Typically this happens in a North American winter time. So in like California, if it's an El Nino year, the winter is going to be much warmer, and that's because the ocean water is warmer, and that's kind of what dictates their climate there. So the ocean water is going to be much warmer, and it's going to cause a lot more rain. So less snow, a lot more rain. Typically, El Nino years in Southern California that's when they have like the massive landslides and all of that. In general, it's going to cause more rain all over the US. But the biggest sort of stuff here, I wrote them down for you. So we'll go over each of these. So the biggest things like in North America are going to be like wetter than average conditions, but mild temperatures. So like less snowpack in the mountains. So we're going to have like less feet of snow in the mountains, which is, we kind of rely on that for water all year because then it like melts slowly. But instead, we're going to have like massive rain that's going to cause like flooding and landslides, and then it's going to like run off real quick. So it's not necessarily like a good thing as far as more rain. I know we always want more rain in the West for fire danger, but yeah, so good and bad. South America, El Nino feeds a lot of thunderstorms. So again, they're going to have a lot more warmer weather because of it and a lot more rain. And one of the really big things in South America, North America as well, but because of that warm water coming, it's going to stop that upwelling. So you're not going to have that nutrients that's going to come into the ocean and those ocean ecosystems that you normally would. So you see massive collapse of ocean fisheries. So giant amounts of fish are going to die. In California, I reference California a lot because that's where I'm from. But a lot of times in an El Nino year, you'll see the sea lions are starving to death because there's no little fish, because they have to move away because it's so warm for them. So a lot of times or you'll see like weird like tropical animals getting washed up because they're all confused and they swam like way up high where they weren't supposed to go. And then there was like sea snakes and stuff getting washed up in Southern California and El Nino. So the animals get really confused. A lot of them just can't tolerate the change or the collapse of their food chain. And so there's a lot of death and a lot of financial loss for fishermen and that whole industry because of El Nino. So El Nino definitely impacts ocean food chains. So that's maybe not the best way to think about it. So do El Nino and La Nina cause ocean circulation. No, El Nino and La Nina are the names of the fact that of the heat of the water moving around. The hot water moving around is caused by winds and the Coriolis effect. The Coriolis effect is like the earth spinning and it causes the oceans to move, and winds pushing it that way as well. So ocean circulation, two things caused by Coriolis, earth spinning, and winds pushing it that way. And so in a La Nina year or a typical year, hot water is in Australia. In an El Nino, we're not 100% sure why, but the winds stop. So we still have the Coriolis effect pushing the hot water over there, but we don't really, they don't stop completely, but we have less winds, and that causes that hot water to come back east. So the west side of California and South America areas and Mexico. And that's what causes like these issues. Hopefully that answered your question. Let me know if it didn't. How do we prevent dead zones? So dead zones are something different. Dead zones are, let me answer that in just one sec. Let me go over this because that's like kind of a different idea. Let me finish this one. In Asia, the rainfall moves in is warmer towards India. And so, okay, let me say that again. So in Asia, so this is in like China and that whole area over there, the rainfall of that area is going to move towards India. So India is going to have like massive monsoons, whereas you're going to see drought conditions going on in Australia and Asia. So in that typical warm water is going to cause a lot of rainfall in Australia, but now that it's not there anymore, in Australia, you're going to see massive droughts and fires and things like that. So things that typically you'd see in the US, in the West, is going to happen in Australia at that time. So those are just some things that happen because of El Nino. And again, we don't really know why it happens or better way to like predict when it's coming. We just kind of track, and it took a while for people to even realize. I think that, I don't want to be wrong on this, but I want to say we didn't even really know that this was going on until like the 80s. We didn't like have a name for it and really figure it out. And again, like people like knew, like every once in a while this happens, but it wasn't really a scientific, like, let's study this thing until really recently. So they're still just sort of figuring that out. But obviously like fishermen would, know, hey, the water's really warm and there's no fish this year. And they'd be, they could tell you how long that's been happening. But okay, so let's talk about dead zones are something a little different. So dead zones, and the most famous area to talk about that is going to be in the Gulf of Mexico. Dead zones are when you have an excessive nutrients coming from like an artificial source. So the Mississippi River is going to be coming down into the Gulf, and it's going to be bringing in excessive nutrients because of all of the farms that it runs into, or has runoff from on the way down. So you're going to have a lot of fertilizer, artificial fertilizer that we're putting on those farms, as well as all of the cow poop that it's going to get drained into the water as it goes by cattle farms, not just cows, pigs, chickens, everything coming in that area. So the river is going to bring a massive amount of nutrients, and that's going to dump out into the ocean, or could dump out into a lake or whatever, really. And then you're going to have like a boom of organisms, like single-celled algae. When those algae like eat it all up, they're going to die. And let's make sure I'm getting this right. And as they decompose, decomposers are not producers. Decomposers are organisms that breathe oxygen. And so as it decomposes, they're going to breathe in all of the oxygen. And you're going to now have an area that has no nutrients and no oxygen. And it's just going to be a dead zone. So nothing can live there. Does that kind of make sense of what a dead zone is? So dead zones are caused by a not real source of, I don't want to say artificial, because and have you think it's like chemicals are weird, because it could just be cow poop, really, which is not, it's just like a non-normal amount of energy coming in. Is this the same with the red water found around Florida? I'd have to know specifically what the red water is. It could be a lot of different things that you're referencing. Red algae, yes. So red algae in the ocean is typically caused by, yes, an influx of like unnatural, I guess it's a better way to say it, unnatural nutrients. But sometimes red algae can live more specifically with different water temperatures. So that, could be something that is picked up, different types of year, or if there's like a weird weather thing going on, it's like hotter. But yeah, so you have a uh, unnatural nutrient introduced, and then you have red algae growing, single-celled red algae. Like nothing can eat these single-celled red algae. They're really toxic for everything. And they get in the gills of fish. They can kill fish. They get like inside of mussels. They get inside of um, lobsters. I know it took me a while to come up with that word. Lobsters, and then you can't eat lobsters. A lot of red algae is like a neurotoxin, so if you were to eat it, then you can die. Yeah, that's a red tide. So, and then sometimes red tides are really cool though at night because they are photoluminescent, so it will make the waves glow. So if you go and go look at the ocean at night, and every time it crashes, it'll almost look like the moonlight is like really beaming on it, but it'll look kind of unnatural. And every time like an ocean wave crashes, it'll glow really brightly, and that can be the red tide or the different algae photoluminescence. So it's kind of cool in that way, but it's really toxic for the organisms, and that's again caused by an influx of unnatural amounts of nutrients in the ocean. No, they're natural there. So those organisms are going to be natural in the area. So you couldn't really call it an invasive species. Invasive is going to be taken out of one environment and put into another. It's just going to be an imbalance caused by humans tinkering with the natural way of things. So naturally you think that maybe the green algae or something else would win out over them. But maybe they needed like phosphorus and there's not enough in that environment. So typically it's not an issue, but then a farmer, dumps 100,000 whatever's of phosphorus on their farm, and then it's going to cause that to happen. Sometimes these things too can grow from different nutrients or chemicals in like runoff. So like in chemicals from like car waste or like petroleum. So a lot of times you'll have a red tide. Let's say it's been like summer and it hasn't really rained for a while, and then you have a massive rain and all that water runs off into the ocean. Then you're gonna have a red tide happen after that. So because of all the runoff from the land and different like gross stuff on the streets getting washed into the water, all of that is gonna cause those like kind of usually regulated organisms to take off and red tide, and it's toxic and you can't go swimming. But cool. So I think we're out of time. If there's any last minute questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Thank you guys for coming and joining me this evening. Tropical rainforest. So I guess we can hop back on our picture here. Yeah, no problem. Tropical rainforests are going to be rainforests. And again, a rainforest is classified by the amount of rainfall. It has to be, I don't know off the top of my head, but it has to be like a certain inches of rain or centimeters of rain that they get in a year. And tropical is going to be not temperate. So tropical is going to be like right on that equator. So it's going to be warm all the time. So in this picture, it is those very, very green areas are going to be your tropical rainforest. So that is going to be like the Amazon, the Congo in Africa, and then like the Indonesia area over there, maybe northern Australia is going to be your tropical rainforest. All right, hopefully that helped. Have a good night, and we'll see you next time.